Okay,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
my phone says it's 5:30, so I'll call the meeting to order at 5:30. First order of business is that Gail sent some minutes around. Did you all have a chance to look at them?
Yes.
And is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Tom, you're up.
All right, we have a large project similar to the one that's ongoing with the landfill and the garage. We have another large fund like that, 3225. It entails the replacement of 2 of our 3 gravity thickeners, the rebuild of them, the overhaul. The third one was actually overhauled about 1.5 to 2 years ago. Replacement of the 19 large VFDs for all of our large lift pumps at the facility, and repairs to our lime silo boot, which connects the lime silo to the bin activator on
So
the
let's
roof of the
back up
building.
a step. For those who haven't toured the plant and those who may be at home, why don't you tell us what a gravity thickener is?
Gravity thickener, all the sludge that settles in the plant settles in the clarifiers. They're settled by gravity. It's
Those are the
big round tanks.
tanks.
Yes, either the primary, the first stage, or the second stage clarifiers. This sludge then needs to be thickened before it can be dewatered and taken to the landfill. So there are special tanks at the facility. They're similar to the clarifiers, but they're a little bit different design, a much steeper sloped floor. They're smaller in volume, and their job is we pump all the sludge from the bottom of the large clarifiers to the thickeners, and over time through gravity, the sludge thickens to the bottom to a higher percent solid, and the supernate, the effluent, as more sludge goes in, that leaves the top and is reprocessed through the plant as a side stream and treated again. Then this sludge is taken and put into holding tanks where we condition it and we run it through the filter presses and dewater it into the sludge cake, which goes to the landfill. So these thickeners have been in place for 40 years. We did minor upgrades in the early 2000s when we did the big project. We changed the gear reducer units on them, the gear drives and the electric motors, and that was it. We never touched anything below the water line. Since then, due to the age and being constantly submerged in wastewater, they've literally rotted out everything below the water line, including the bridge that all the mechanism hangs from, has just rotted away from age. It's
Would it be
constant.
fair to say that it's a toxic environment?
It's very toxic, yeah, it's very corrosive, hydrogen sulfide gases. It's always wet environment, methane. So we got to the point where one completely failed. The torque tube, which suspends all the drive mechanism below the water line, the rakes and the plows, which actually move the sludge around as it thickens so it can be collected in a central hopper and then transferred into the dewatering process, sheared right off. Everything collapsed and fell into the tank. That was number 3. That was the first priority. We did that. Like I said, it's been back in service about 1.5 years or so now. We assessed the other 2 and we found that they were in no better shape. One of them actually had to be taken out of service for almost 1 year. Well, we rebuilt it ourselves just enough to get it going. It was on the verge of collapsing and falling in. We replaced some wear pots on there just to keep it going because we can only operate with a minimum of 2. So if we had lost that one there, it was during the time that number 3 was being rebuilt, we would have been, at trouble. So we rebuilt what we could on that one to keep it going at minimal cost, and it became a capital project. So
now we're going to rebuild these, I assume, in series because you can only get
yeah, only
one
2.
out.
3's obviously the new one that'll stay up and running. We're going to assess 1 and 2 and decide which one we feel is the best candidate to go next. It's probably going to be number 2 since we did some work on 1 to keep it going. 2's had no work done to it. Then we'll do 2. And then once 2 is completed, it's been accepted, it's been tested by the manufacturer and met all their specifications. We'll then switch over and do the other one.
What are we looking at for a time frame?
260 days.
For each one or total?
Total contract. The lead time on the mechanisms is anywhere from 3 to 4 months. They have to be manufactured to original drawings by Walker Process. So there's a long lead time on these.
You don't buy these off the shelf?
You don't buy these. These are custom built. Each one is basically stick built. It's all steel. It's all welding, fabrication, and they'll be built once they're audited by Walker Process. They have the original drawings, they built the original mechanisms for the entire plant for all of our clarification units and thickeners.
Has this gone out to bid?
This has gone out to bid, it has been awarded to IPC Leiden. And we actually had our first pre-construction kickoff meeting today.
And who's the designer?
Designer is CDM Smith.
Okay. And so our job is now to oversee the construction process
Yep,
and approve the payment of bills.
correct.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on that aspect? Mike?
Yeah, just one question. Tom, by looking at those are all steel lines? The pipe for the, I think it was a gravity, that showed extensive rock all over that with the valves
Yeah,
on?
that's ductile iron. That is part of the exterior plumbing. That is the lines for drainage and for where the waste sludge goes, overflow, underflow, things like that. That's all ductile iron.
Now, have they looked into making that out of a different material that's more non-corrosive, or is it just too cost prohibitive?
It's cost prohibitive, and they're ductile line, the ductile pipe will be cement line. What happened there is it's hydrogen sulfide got inside that. That's actually a dry well.
Okay.
But hydrogen sulfide did get in there, because over time, sludge sometimes gets in there, it backs up, and it creates hydrogen sulfide, and it actually formed an acid and actually ate at the pipes.
Okay.
Yeah. They're constantly wet from rainwater infiltrating those dry wells.
So there's no really perfect remedy because of just the nature
No,
of it?
no.
Thank you.
Is this project strictly mechanicals of the tanks?
It's all mechanical, there's no structural, it's going to be the torque tube which connects the gear drive unit, gear reduction unit. There's a gear reduction unit that sits on what's called a full bridge. Basically, it's an I-beam catwalk, like a bridge, that sits on the sidewalls of the tank. From there's a torque tube that hangs down from the gear reduction unit, and it supports a rake mechanism. The rake mechanism extends the entire diameter of the tank, and it has plows on it, and the rake turns at a very low speed. And what the rake does is all the sludge that settles in the tank by gravity is pushed to the center of the tank. In the center of the tank, there's a collection hopper that's plumbed underground to our main control building, where there's a set of pumps that take the sludge that's been thickened and they transfer it into 2 holding tanks at the facility that we use during our dewatering process to draw sludge out of the dewater before it goes to the landfill.
And is this a picture of the current?
That's a picture of, that's the worst one. That's basically.
Well, of course, you
corroded.
always want to take a picture of
Yes.
the worst looking.
Yeah, that is the worst one. That's corroded from mostly hydrogen sulfide and being in the ground for over 40 years.
So those are submerged?
They're not submerged, they're in wells, but what happens is, every time it rains, you get infiltration into the wells, you get rainwater in the wells, and you're constantly pumping them out. So it's just,
So like Mike had said, with changing the material, maybe galvanize, or I know stainless is
this is,
extremely,
this is ductile iron, it's what's used, it's what's the standard, all the valves are ductile iron, it's all Vitalic connections. Most of the connections are held on with Vitalic clamps. It's what the industry standard is. The pipe will be coated, obviously that's not coated anymore. The new coatings are a lot different than the old coatings too.
and what's the condition of the tanks? Has the H2S gotten to the concrete?
No, there's been no concrete damage. The tanks itself are fine with that. There's enough ventilation on the tanks. It's just within that dry well. You have a closed Bilco hatch on it. There's really no ventilation on that well. Rainwater gets in over time.
Is this a picture of the tank? Is this the lining? You see the tank? Is that what that is? Like that's the walkway?
That's the walk. That's the catwalk on the center bridge, and basically what you're seeing above it is the dome. They're fully domed. There's a dome structure to hold the odors in because they are thickeners. They hold the sludge for a long time. There's a full odor control unit that actually pulls all the air constantly from those tanks and scrubs the odors from those tanks before it leaves.
So in order to repair this, they have to remove the
That whole dome comes off, yeah. Last time they did it, they got pretty good at it. They took it off, I don't know, maybe a half dozen times on and off. They would just, had a crane there, and they were moving that thing every time they had to work on it to do something. Off it came, set it in one of the fields, picked it back up, dropped it back on. Yeah.
Who was the contractor on the first tank?
The first contractor was Pride Environmental. We weren't able to bid on this job. Regrettably, we wish they could, but they had too much on their plate. They couldn't bid it.
Okay, so then the second thing you talked about would have been the lime silo boot.
Yeah. The lime silo, we got a 90-ton lime silo. It's filled with calcium carbonate. It's granular quick lime, a lot more potent than the stuff you buy at Home Depot. We go through about 25 tons a week. We slake it into a slurry, about 11%, 10% solution. That's what we use for our dewatering process, and we use for alkalinity and pH control in the plant. The large silo itself is a cylinder. It reduces down to a cone. This cone is used to deliver the lime to a screw device, which sends it to one of the two slakers. It's coupled mechanically by a set of suspension mounts, and it's wrapped in a bladder. The bladder keeps the lime basically in from when it drops from the silo to basically think of it as a big flour sifter. And it has to be able to flex and move because it vibrates and shakes to basically sift it down. It's over 40 years old. It's dry rot. It's burst in several places. We've patched it in-house. It leaks lime constantly. If it goes, we have the potential of 90 tons of lime pouring into that building. So, and it would not be a good thing. So this is actually probably of the three projects, the most, even though it's the smallest one, it's a one-day repair, has to be done in one day because of logistics and processing the plant. It's probably the one that's gonna give us the most headaches, just because to pull it off, it's gonna require a lot of coordination between us and the contractor and outside vendors for chemical deliveries, because we have to totally empty the silo, which we don't do. Like I said, we go through 25 tons of this stuff a week. Our process is dependent on it. So we need to empty the silo, have the contractors ready from whenever we give them the go-ahead to get in there. They have to go and get in there. They have a 24-hour window from then to complete the repairs. Then we have to have trucks standing by ready to blow new product into the silo so we can start processing again.
Okay, what's the value of that contract?
$100,000, including GS and RE services, general services, and resident engineering.
And
The bid itself came in at $33,684. Material and pots, we were able to source the original vendor of the silo. It's made by 3 or 4 different companies, but CDM was good. They found out who made it because there was no manufacturer's tags anywhere on it. And the pots prices are ridiculously cheap. Very cheap pot prices, so we're not looking at a big dollar value for replacement pots. Mostly it's rubber bladders and things like that.
so this is not a one-off thing, this is something that was available somewhere?
The company's still in business that made it, yeah. We got lucky. There's not a lot of silo companies still in business that have been around, from the 70s. So we got lucky. This company is one of the big ones, and they're still in business. So we can get the pots. They've already talked to them. The pots are available.
Should you buy a second one to keep around?
Pot-wise, it's not in the project to do. We can buy it ourselves. It's so cheap. It's something that we can do. What they have to do is they're gonna send us a bunch of, it's one of those things, you can't open it up. Once you open it up, you can't close it again. So we're gonna get a bunch of different scenarios, because there's all different scenarios. They could have gone any way, depending on which way it was manufactured at the time. So we're gonna get a bunch of the different pots, because it could go any way. When we take it apart, we'll find out which ones actually are the ones we need, and those will be the ones we use.
Okay, I forgot to ask you, the first one for the gravity thickeners, what's the value of that?
$363,285.
And that's just the construction bid?
That's construction, correct.
That's not the
That's not the
CDM Smith and?
No, the entire general services and resident engineering and SCADA integration, which is a component of the VFDs, is $178,000 for CDM to oversee all 3 projects and provide the SCADA integration with all the new 19 VFDs.
Okay, anybody have any question about lime silo boots?
What's the diameter of that tank?
Roughly 30 feet.
30 feet?
Yep.
So that dome must be pretty good size then.
It's all aluminum, it's all riveted in place panel. So it's good size, but it's not that heavy, believe it or not, because it is all aluminum skin.
Okay. Then moving on to the variable.
Jack, I just got one question, my
Yeah,
God,
sure.
please, thank you. So, I think we all know with every construction job, that things happen, you're saying it has to be done in 24 hours. Did CDM or anybody give us a contingency plan in case something they get in there and something really bad happened and they were not able to finish this in 24 hours?
Yes,
I mean, so, what,
We tell them 24,
oh, okay.
yeah. We can go 3 days if we
So
have
you,
to.
okay, that probably answers my
Yeah.
question.
Could we get AACS to edit that?
We get copies of all the contracts, the bids and the contracts,
Sure.
just so if we're gonna follow up.
Yeah, we'll take care of that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? So then variable frequency drives.
VFDs.
Tell us what they are, what they do.
Basically, all the large lift pumps at the plant, you don't run them at 100% speed all the time. You need to vary the speed of the pumps based upon the amount of wastewater coming in. So what they do is they vary the frequency of the drive unit through the motor, and
So at halftime of a Patriots game, they run at full speed?
when it rains a lot, they run at full speed, exactly. When everybody's flushing at halftime, they run it, yeah. Yeah. So basically, they vary the frequency of the drive, and that in turn, the motor behaves differently. It runs either slower or faster.
And we have a picture of those, Gail?
There should be some.
Yeah.
There's various sizes. Yeah, those are some of the 60 horse VFDs for the second stage lift pump right there.
This is inside of.
Yeah, and those could be anything. They could be a blended sludge pump. They could be a first stage or a South Attleboro or a RAS pump. It depends. They're all the same cabinet size. It's hard to say which ones those are from.
And so how do these
Those are
drives
RES
know
pumps.
what to do?
How do they know what to do?
Is there sensors that?
But yeah, there is. What most of them either they're gonna be the flow pace. They're gonna work off a wet well level. There's gonna be some type of 4 to 20 milliamp signal that's going to drive the analog card in our SCADA system. It's gonna send a signal back, and based on how the engineers scale the SCADA system, it's gonna either increase or decrease the signal back to the VFD, the current back to the VFD, and the drive's either gonna ramp up or it's gonna ramp down. And it's
This is all
all automated. It's
controlled
all
by
computer.
sensors.
It's all computer controlled, and basically, the VFDs themselves, the rectifiers and the capacitors, things like that, they're off the shelf things you can get. And what the problem is all the main board computers and all of these are obsolete. They don't make them. They haven't made them. Siemens Robocon does not make them anymore. We probably have the only spares in the country at our plant. We own the
A
only
computer
spares.
that's 2 years old is probably obsolete.
Yeah.
One that goes back to the beginning of this plant is an antique.
Yeah, considering most things that you buy aren't brand new, they've been in the industry and in the field for quite a while before they'll even allow them into a wastewater plant. They have to be proven. So yeah, these are, probably 20 years. So that's what the problem is. We can't get boards anymore. We have a few spare boards. If we do lose boards, luckily they're interchangeable. They're already been programmed. We sent them out. We had them programmed by Siemens, ready to go. But once we lose them, game over. We can't control the pumps anymore.
Okay.
So we're being a little
And what's the value of this contract?
$256,459, and that went to Fall River Electric.
And there's 19, is that correct?
There's 19 of them, yeah.
And
Anywhere from 30 to 60 horsepower in size.
what's the time frame on this?
On the VFDs. I do not have the contract in front of me.
You know, when it's expected to start work?
We're supposed to have a pre-construction meeting in 2 weeks. I know it is supposed to end, I can tell you this, it's not as long as the gravity thickeners because they're more readily available, which was, I believe, 260 days plus 20 days after signing of documents. I believe, I want to say 180 days, but I don't actually have the contract in front of me.
Okay. And so they can't replace them all at once? This has to
No,
be
they're gonna do it one at a time as we direct them, and they'll work with us as to where we want them to change them, which ones first and what can and can't be changed. Yep,
Does it
so.
mean some pump will be down when the drive is
Yeah,
down, right?
yeah, exactly. We always have redundancy. We have a lot of redundancy, and depending upon conditions and what's going on. It's one of those things, if things aren't going well somewhere, you're not gonna change that one, you're gonna go change another one today. That's how it's gonna work.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on this part of the project?
Are any of these projects contingent upon another one? Are they all independent?
They're all independent, yeah, they are all independent. The lime silo is actually, being done by IPC Lighting, also the company that's doing the gravity thickeners. So, but, they'll be on site with the gravity thickeners and available to do the silo for us. That was probably the hardest one to get anybody to even bid, nobody actually bid on it. We actually went out, it's because of the dollar value, we went out and we solicited quotations, and they're the only ones that quoted, because nobody would even bid when we did an open bid. Nobody bid on it, nobody wanted it.
It's a nasty job.
There's too many unknowns, and it's not worth mobilizing for, if you're not already out here. It's gonna consume too much money to mobilize for that job, so we were hoping that whoever did the gravity thickness would do it, and they got the gravity thickness, and they agreed to do it,
Mhm.
so.
Okay,
Otherwise, we didn't know what we were gonna do on that one.
all right. So, would you expect to have any business for us on these next month, or would it be 2 months before we hear anything?
Unless they do some, unless we get some billing from Leiden for, internal stuff going on, I don't think so, because they're still gonna be in the submittal process, I would say, by then. And, like I said, you're looking at a 3 to 4 month lead.
Okay, so it'll be a while before we hear anything.
Yeah,
from them.
it'll be a while, yeah, unless they submit something for shops and things
Are
like
there
that.
subcontractors on any of these?
Leiden is gonna have, I think, like a electrician do the disconnect and the reconnect of the motors on the gravity thickness when they separate them. Other than that, there's gonna be no subs that they spoke of. I don't know with Fall River, I assume not. Fall River's DCAM on this one, they're a DCAM contractor, and there was no sub bids on that. As far as I know, they handle it all, it's all electrical.
Okay. Anybody have anything else for Tom before we say goodnight?
Who's, with the money for these projects? Is it coming from the wastewater? Is it coming from the city?
We went out to bond for about 1.5 million, and roughly just under $500,000 came from premiums and other projects that we had closed out last year that still had money left in them. That's how we seeded the original design engineering was done through that, and the rest of the money will be coming from the remainder of that, and we did go out for a bond. We were approved for a $1.5 million bond. I think our only other thing is the 60 days on the lime silo contract going in with a change order right out of the chute, so to speak. Leiden, we met with Leiden today. They're doing the gravity thickness, they're doing the silo. Obviously, I believe the gravity thickness is like 260 days because of the lead time. Silo is 60 days. They asked, and we do agree, we think it's better that they're there fully mobilized, and if there is any problems, they have a full staff there. They asked they need to sign their agreement with us for the contract for doing the work on the silo. They asked if they could then get a change order, no cost change order, that would put the actual stop date out from starting within 20 days. That way they're fully mobilized, they have full staff there, so when they're working on the gravity thickness, because we don't know when we're gonna run out of line. It's one of those things, we're using roughly 25 tons a week. We may use a foot one day out of the silo, next day we use 2.5 feet, then we use a half a foot. It depends upon plant flow, how much sludge we're processing. So we told them anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks to empty that silo, but once we empty it, we need to get you in there. So we would prefer to have them there on the gravity thickeners working with the staff, because I told them today, I may be calling you Sunday morning saying you need to be here, and you're gonna show up on a Sunday and start this job, because I can't wait around for Monday. So that was one thing that they did request. We said we would talk to you today.
So how far out do they want to push it?
They didn't say. I think until they get closer to knowing when the gravity thickener drives are gonna, when the gravity thickener mechanisms are gonna show up, when they're gonna be on site. So by then they'll know when they're gonna be mobilizing. That way
It's gonna
they,
be 3 or 4 months from now?
it could be 12 weeks or more, 12 to 15 weeks, yeah.
And you're comfortable that the boot won't give way,
The boot's been like this for a long time, I hate to say, yeah.
but you still have your fingers crossed?
Yeah, we've had our fingers crossed on this thing for years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
I started getting cramps, so I decided to fix it in my fingers.
Okay, and there's no issue with winter weather or anything?
No, it's all, the work is, inside the bottom of the silo, inside of a room underneath the silo. Not the best place to work, but it's inside. Yeah.
There must be some OSHA requirements.
Yes.
Because if that thing lets go, you'd be dead, right?
They'll be working on it empty, they'll never be in there with it full. We have to empty it before they can even start.
Completely.
We got, yeah, that's the thing, that's, we have a big stake in this too, we have to get it empty. We have to have everything lined up, so our suppliers are ready to start filling the silo when they're done. We have a minimum of a 1 week lead time on ordering product, it's a mine product. So there's a lot of coordination between us and the contractor to pull this off. Did it back in the early 2000s. We did work on the silo and we did the big upgrade and it went okay. Same thing with the VFDs, we rebuilt that entire plant from the ground up and, never violated permit once, never lost anything. So, we feel pretty confident with it. It's just gonna be a lot of coordination and talking to the vendors and seeing what they can do to help us out with getting us products, even though they're not required to, but see if they can, help us along and be there when we need them.
Okay. Ed?
You mentioned if there was a failure of a key component, I think it was the bladder,
Yeah.
that you could drop the entire contents?
It would flow into the slaker room underneath. Whatever's in there is going to start leaking, and it right now it leaks, and it leaks through the patches. But if it was to ever fail completely, it would just start leaking into the building.
Is there any mechanism for fail-safe operation of that could kick in?
No, it's a rubber boot, and it's literally a very thick rubber boot that wraps around this large diameter silo and connects that cone section to the cylinder. And then it hangs on some suspension points. They look like dog bones, and they go around, and they have shock mounts in them. And it has a motor on it with a counterweight that actually shakes it back and forth and moves it around on these bones. And that's what the bladder does, is it contains everything, so it stays in, goes into the cone, and from there it goes to a screw that we can run either forward or reverse. We just change switch the phase of the motor, and we drop it into one of the two switches.
So it's pretty obvious when this bladder is being stretched, worn out. It is obvious to you that it's time to replace it?
Yeah, it actually started leaking. It started having pinholes in it. Yeah.
And how much time do you estimate that we have now to replace that?
It's been like this 10 years,
Yeah.
probably.
In a failure mode?
It's been 10 years that it's been leaking, yeah.
So isn't that something where it qualifies as an emergency to?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody have any other questions?
I think it makes sense to wait until they're mobilized with the full staff to do that.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, makes sense.
you got so many moving parts here.
Yeah, it's all timing, and I mean, we'd love to have them do it now. If they have to, they'll do it now. But it's still one of those things, we don't know how long it's gonna take us to empty it, and we're gonna call them up and say, we need you here now, and if we have to, sit around, we're gonna have them sit around waiting, mobilize and sit around waiting for us to say to get here, and we could be off a week almost, depending upon how much lime we're using, so they're gonna sit around for nothing, and time's gonna kinda be on us, cause they're ready to work and we're not letting them work, and then once the work is ready to be done, we need them there, and we just feel safer having them there with a lot more staff on hand. They're gonna have more people on hand because the gravity fixers is a much bigger job. If something goes wrong or goes sideways, they'll be there with more staff.
Okay,
We hope that doesn't, but
Tom, you can't store a little bit of lime in a dump truck or something?
No, we go through 25 ton. Basically, have you ever seen those large trucks from Adams, Mass, those huge hopper trucks, those little train hopper cars?
Yeah.
They bring me one of those a week, and we blow through it. Yeah. So, I mean, and you need a way to lift it up, because now you have to gravity feed it into the slakers. You need to feed it into the two slakers that actually take it and they turn it into a slurry. They take that granular quicklime and they actually turn it into a slurry, into a liquid. We process it on site and we make a liquid out of it to use throughout the facility. The only other way would be hydrated lime, and we don't have the tank capacity or the tanks designed to take hydrated lime. You just have to have hydrated lime trucked in a couple times a day. You'd actually have to add water to it and mix it yourself, water it down, mix it yourself. But we're not designed to store or to do that.
Okay,
Thank you.
anything else? All right, then let Gail know when you need to come back.
We may have something for Collins coming. The final closeout application number 16.
Okay.
Finally.
Well, hopefully that will happen at our next meeting.
Yes, it was supposed to happen 2 meetings ago.
Yeah, we remember.
And we met about that today. We may actually have it for you this time.
Okay, well, thank you, Tom, have a good evening.
You too, thanks. Thank you.
All right, the other item on our agenda is just the next steps with the library. And so Gail has prepared a request for proposals for an owner's project manager. And one of the things we're trying to figure out right now, finalize that before the city solicitor gives it a final pass and it goes out on the street. And then, of course, we'll have to get all the proposals and choose someone to do that. But do we have to list in it a projected fee or not? And how much would that projected fee be? Gail put out to the MCCPO or whatever it is.
MAPO, Mass Association of Public Procurement Officials, they have a listserv where you can ask questions, so
Yeah.
I put it out there to find out what do we base the fee on? And basically it came back about 3 to 4% of the construction cost.
Would be the fee. And so now the question is, do we tell people that the construction cost is $6.5 million and therefore the fee would be 3% of that? Or do we simply say it's a construction cost of $6.5 million and after we make a quality-based choice, we will then negotiate a fee with you? And that's what we need to know. Once we have an OPM on board, we can then go back and negotiate a new contract amendment with BH&A, because if you remember, the original project was based on $1,250,000 and it was a 10% fee for $125,000. We have spent 98 of that 125, and since it's a $6.5 million project, the question is, what should that be? One of the things Gail did was to get something from Division of Capital Asset Management, DCAM, which if I read their chart correctly, seems to suggest that 6.2% would be the architectural fee for a project of that size. So if you look at the chart on the second page, if you have that, you'll see that from $3,750,000 to $7,499,999, there are fees depending on the category, and I chose Group 5, repairs and renovations of limited complexity involving primarily a single discipline, i.e. roofs, masonry repairs, window replacement, mechanical, electrical, plumbing work, etc. That's what seemed to me to apply. And so that category 5 in that price range comes out around 6.2%. So again, we will then have to negotiate a fee, but at least we have some guidance from them. Once we have a fee for them, a fee for the OPM, and we get an updated number from BH&A, because that 6.3 million or whatever it was before, that may have changed given inflation or whatever. We can put all of that together, and the mayor will then send down to the council and ask for a bond issue for whatever we need. So if it's 6.5 million for construction, and it's whatever 3% of that, and well, if you add 6.2 and 3% together, that's 9%. 10% would be $650,000, so we're talking something north of $7 million for the bond issue to make this building usable again. Take care of the building envelope, the roof, the windows, the bricks, and also redo the HVAC system to make it usable. And then whether we where we then go with the building and what use it ends up with, that's certainly open for discussion, but I did start that discussion with the city council a couple weeks ago. There was stunned silence in the room, and no one made a comment. But I also know that the mayor is going to send down to us, when free cash is certified later in the fall, the money to start the public safety feasibility study to determine what that building would look like, what it would cost, and where it should be located. So that will be another project that will be coming our way in the not too distant future. And as I said to you before, since that's going to be a very large project, I'm guessing $35–40 million, we ought to, in my opinion, choose the best possible place for that. And if that means that this building has to move somewhere else, and we can reuse this as part of it, I think that's important. So we don't have to go over all of that again. So those are the next steps. We need to get the RFP out on the street, and then be ready, hopefully ready to go in the spring with the project. So anybody have any questions or comments on that? So right now, we won't be too busy, but when the weather turns bad, I think we're going to be very busy. And hopefully we can fill in some of that time with, choosing those to interview and choosing an OPM for the library rehab.
When's the RFP going out?
As soon as we can get the city solicitor to bless it, and Gail's going to try and talk with Deb Anderson at the state to see whether we have. One of the things that always bothered us, I know it bothered Barry Lacasse tremendously, was that when you tell somebody what you're going to pay in the RFP, then they're not going to bid any less than that. So if we can tell them this is the value of the construction, and we'll negotiate a fee with you later, at least we haven't told them we're going to pay you 3% or 4% or 2.5% or whatever the number is. So, but if we have to, we have to.
Jersey Public Works.
So if the value goes down because the competition is good, then the OPM's rate could be.
No, it's going to be a fixed fee, and we're going to have to put that into the bond. And if there's and if it comes in at 5.5 million rather than 6.5 million, they're still going to get their fixed fee, because we can't hire them on an hourly basis, because then we wouldn't know what the upside was, and there's no way the auditor could allow us to sign the contract or would sign off on it. Public contracting.
And if it went the other way, would it be higher? Say it was 10 million.
Yes, if the project, if the construction came in at 8 million, they'd still be working on their 3% of 6.5.
Okay, so it's locked in at.
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions? Then our next meeting, have we scheduled it?
October 2nd.
And you all remember that next Wednesday we have a school building committee meeting. But it looks like October 2nd would be our next meeting. And October 9th would be the next SBC meeting, correct?
Yes.
10-2,
10-2 for this, and
10-9 for SBC.
10-9, you're marking your schedules down, would be the next SBC meeting after the 11th of September. So September 11th and October 9th for the SBC. All right, are we ready to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned at
6:10.
6:10.